Hello, everyone. Welcome to Devoteam's Cloud Lounge. And today we're talking about an interesting topic, which is monolithic architectures. Back in the day in 2004, when I started my career with IT and I used to be a system administrator, one of my bosses often used to make joke about monolithic, my problem child. Today with me, I have our AWS technical lead, Ingvar, who's going to talk about how to break monolith and the use case from a large financial services that he has been working on. Ingvar, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. What do you think, Ingvar? Can you give us an audience a brief overview of what monolithic infrastructure looks like? Why was it built in the day? And what are the challenges with it as on day today?
Yeah, sure. So monolithic infrastructure is essentially a single large system. It includes all the components needed for the application to run. And it can be like servers, databases, and user interface. And in the past, it was commonly developed because it was the simple, it was straightforward approach to build an application.
Though there are quite big challenges with it, like you have long lead times, you have fear of failed changes, the fail fast, fail often methodology of agile cannot be achieved with it. And one of the another problems with the idea of cloud technologies coming into the play is that customers are moving to more microservices and serverless technologies. And because of that, monolithic over a period of time has had a bad name. One of the main issues with monolithic infrastructure, because they are so tightly coupled with each of the services, it is very hard to scale and maintain. Because of those, it can be hard to scale individual components of the systems or to separately as well. This can also lead to performance issues and slow response times as well. We have seen for some of the projects that you've been working on.
Yeah, that's right. And another issue is that monolithic architecture is very difficult to deploy new features and updates without affecting the entire system. And it increases risk of downtime and other disruptions.
Absolutely.
And as well as monolithic systems can be hard to integrate with other systems and services, limiting the flexibility and extensibility.
Oh, that kind of makes sense. But I believe today we're talking about a large financial institution where you've done some a proof of concept for an application to be migrated to Amazon Web Services. Yeah. What is the best practice or the approach that you generally take when you are attacking these kind of problems for customers?
Yeah, so the approach that we chosen was a strangler pattern. It's been around for several years, but
absolutely,
they're kind of introducing it into the cloud space. So essentially, kind of take a data-driven approach and started kind of measuring the application usage, start to understand the application, analyze the patterns, and kind of categorize the API request into their own domains. That's kind of the first step to have a good understanding of the application. And then when you plan for the actual migration, it's important to have established some real-time monitoring of your API usage. And then when you kind of gradually reroute API requests from your monolith into microservices.
I agree, because when you're talking about these kind of migrations, you want to take a data-driven approach. We talk a lot about sustainability, using IT sustainably, and not over-speccing users resources as well. You'll eventually pay the right amount from the start itself. And I feel a lot of times customers want to take a data-driven approach to these kind of migrations as such, to identify what is my actual usage and go on from there. So, what's your approach in terms of how to do some of these kind of migrations?
Yeah, so if you're looking at here as just an example how we can implement strangler pattern for a migration. So in this example, you start with just a simple rehost of your monolith, the application onto an EC2 instances.
Okay.
And you start to migrate the database into an RDS using the database migration services. And basically put in front of the application, have an API gateway, which is basically a facade on top of your application. And then it's going to reroute requests from the clients using the API into that API gateway. So at that point, it's just the monolith with the API on the front.
Understood. Now, is this something that you do it for all, or this is just an example that you're giving? Is there a reason to do a rehost to AWS? Can't I just keep it on data center and still do the strangler pattern?
Yeah, sure. So in this example, there were some compelling events. There were data center exits, or the hardware infrastructure, on-prem infrastructure was old and end of life.
Understood.
So there were limited time you had to do the migration.
Understood.
Another option would be just to keep the monolith on-prem, and we just have load balancers between on-prem and cloud.
Understood.
That's a perfect.
So if a customer has a compelling event, so for example, the data center exit has to happen in 2 months' time, you can't do a full-fledged re-architect of the application in 2 months. So you do this kind of a methodology wherein you rehost stuff to AWS and then you start moving things. In terms of what are the options for the customers available at this stage then?
Yeah, so one popular alternative is Microservice Architecture, which is in this example. So in this approach, the application is broken down into smaller independent services.
Okay.
You come back to the API, understand your API request, what the domains are, and split that into individual microservices. And in this example, we're using containers on Kubernetes. So this basically allows for flexibility and scalability. So you can develop your own service independently and scale it all independently. And if there's a change, you're just changing one small part of the system instead of the whole application.
Okay. So in this case, you are re-architecting in your step 2, where you're using some of the newer microservices then in that case. And how does your step 3 go on then?
Yeah. So at step 2, you do it iteratively. You might move one you deploy one service and reroute the request for those API requests, and then iteratively do that. And at the end, you basically route all the requests through the new microservice architecture, and basically nothing coming to the monolith anymore.
Understood. So, and is there a bit of a testing in and out that you have to kind of measure and take into account? Like you rewrite some part of the code, do you go ahead and test that out, or do you just move ahead?
It's important to have your CloudWatch or any other third-party monitoring, real-time monitoring, monitoring the performance and the usage. Make sure there's nothing. You migrate all your APIs into the architecture. So that's
understood. Key. So in your case of step 3, what are you doing then in that case?
Yeah, so like you said, we've integrated API gateway to CloudWatch for your real-time monitoring.
Okay.
And that's where you can monitor the usage and performance. And step 3 there, you can see that all the requests have been routed through microservices, and you can just safely and happily decommission the monolith.
Okay, interesting. Now I understand that another alternate is for customers to use some of the time serverless architecture. In this case, you're using microservices, using containers. Customers can use serverless architecture as well. Do you think of any pros and cons versus doing a serverless or a microservices architecture?
It depends. So often developers, they are kind of maybe familiar with the particular programming language.
Understood.
Then it's going to be suitable to use containers. And then, using serverless is a bit more investment in development.
I agree.
Whereas obviously the benefits are you're not looking after your infrastructure or maintaining anything. It's
I agree.
More cost effective.
I'm glad that you brought up the investment topic, because a lot of times when I speak to customers, everybody wants to do a re-architect. They want to do a re-platform. It's the business case a lot of times does not add up for it, because there's an investment required. And again, a lot of customers would want to modernize their monolithic applications, but the constraints are not having access to the code. Sometimes people are no longer in the business. And for them to start something from scratch, the strangler pattern absolutely helps and keeps the business running at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's a cost investment. There are several business cases I have done where the return of investment does not add up in the sense. In return ROI for a lift and shift of a monolithic application versus rewriting the application code for cloud can depend on various factors. For a rehost, the initial piece of work is just a quick turnaround, moving to AWS. But however, your ongoing costs and your management of that infrastructure is going to be expensive.
Yeah,
While
absolutely.
as when you look at a Rearchitect or a strangler pattern that you've shown, one of the things that does happen with it is that you can do some initial piece of work which might turn out to be expensive, but over a period of time you get the return of investment. I've taken liberty of a project that I've worked in my recent past, wherein this is a mid-sized complex application where I did 2 different quotations for a customer, the rehost versus Rearchitect. Like I said, the initial cost, the one-time cost is way less in rehost versus in a Rearchitect, because you got to understand the code, rewrite the code, use the strangler pattern. That takes investment. However, when you talk about the cloud consumption and the managed services, which is somebody managing that application for the future, those costs are very low. For example, somebody using serverless architecture, unless and until an AWS region goes down, the application is always running for you. So in this kind of a case, as you see on your screen, in 2.5 years, the customer actually recovered their money. So this is my appeal to customers who are looking to do Rearchitect versus rehost. Involve somebody from a professional partner, from an AWS partner, and identify what is the return of investment and how long can I get it. Because it's not just about investment. You're using innovation, you're moving more to different architectures, you're looking to get data analytics out of it. And those are the kind of things customers do look for in today's time. As you can see, I've taken some liberty to kind of put some costs together, 135K for a rehost and versus 121K for a Rearchitect. This was a dream application. Not all the time things do work in that manner, but overall, over a period of time, between 3 to 4 years, for a complex application, you would have recovered your money and that things would be back. So, Ingvar, how do you generally get started with these kind of things? I know you are working on this POC for the customer that we have showed today. And in a few months, we'll be talking a lot more about when the application is productionized. How do you generally get started with something like this?
Yeah, so at Devoteam, we have our migrate to modernize offering.
Yeah.
And where we can take the customer through what's our approach is, some methodology, what's the journey look like. And usually we start with an initial assessment, do a bit of discovery workshop with the customer.
Okay. I think one of the beauties of this assessment has been that we provide a report to the customer which aligns to their cloud strategy. We identify why is the customer doing a Rearchitect versus a rehost, which is based on their business drivers and budgeting purposes. So I think it's a really good win in that sense, wherein we can help customers get a report out of it and a migration plan which is aligned to their cloud strategy. In that case, thank you, Ingvar. Thank you for being with me today. And I hope in the next couple of months, you can talk about the application that you're migrating in a productionized manner. And we should be able to show our audience something like that time.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.